Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the windswept heart of a Viking village, where the art of beard braiding wasn't just grooming, it was a nightly ritual that wove together status, skill, and community. Picture yourself standing on a frost-kissed hill, the air sharp with pine and wood smoke, as longhouses glow faintly under a twilight sky. You're surrounded by rugged Vikings, their beards glinting with intricate braids, each one a story of pride or prowess. Honestly, you'd probably tangle your fingers in 2 seconds, trying to braid like them. Patience isn't exactly your strong suit. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your time zone and where you're chilling tonight. I love picturing you all scattered across the globe, cozy under blankets or sprawled on couches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not just anywhere, you're in a Norse settlement in Scandinavia, around the 9th century, when Vikings ruled the seas and their beards were as legendary as their longships. The village hums with life. You hear the clink of iron from a blacksmith's forge, the bleat of goats, and the low murmur of voices swapping tales. Your boots crunch on frozen grass as you wander toward a central fire pit, its flames dancing under a sky streaked with fading pinks. You're drawn to a group of men sitting on wooden benches, their hands deftly weaving their beards into tight, intricate braids. It's not just vanity here. A braided beard signals who you are, a warrior, a trader, maybe even a chieftain. You're tempted to tug at your own chin, wondering how you'd stack up, but you keep your hands tucked in your cloak. This is their world, and you're just a guest. Let's set the scene with a famous moment. The Viking raids on Lindisfarne in 793 AD. You've heard of it, right? Norse warriors stormed an English monastery, kicking off the Viking Age with a splash of chaos. But what's less sung about is how those raiders prepped, including braiding their beards to look fierce and unified. You're picturing them now, sitting by fires like this one, fingers twisting hair into patterns that screamed, "Don't mess with us." That's the power of a good braided. Wasn't just style, it was psychological warfare. Historians still argue over how much beards mattered in Viking identities. Some say they were central, others think they're overhyped by modern movies. Either way, you're watching these men braid with a focus that'd put your yoga instructor to shame. And it's clear this ritual runs deep. Now, the weird bit. Some Vikings believed braided beards held luck. You're noticing one warrior, his beard woven with tiny bronze beads that clink softly as he moves. It's not just blink, those beads are charms, meant to ward off bad spirits or bring favor from Odin. You're chuckling, imagining sticking lucky pennies in your hair before a big meeting. But here, it's serious. A braid done right could mean surviving a storm at sea or a battle's chaos. You're wondering if they ever forgot which bead meant what, like mixing up your left and right AirPods. Probably not. These guys were meticulous, their hands moving like they're threading a needle in a blizzard. You settle closer to the fire, its warmth cutting through the evening chill, and watch a young Viking struggle with his first braid. His fingers fumble, the strands slipping, and you're stifling a laugh. It's like watching someone try to parallel park for the first time. An older man, his own beard a masterpiece of knots, leans over, guiding him with a grunt and a nudge. It's a quiet moment, but it hits you. Braiding's not just personal, it's communal, passed down like a family recipe. You're thinking of your own traditions, maybe tying a tie or braiding your kid's hair and how they carry that same weight. that same care. The fire crackles, spitting sparks into the dusk, and you're starting to feel the village's rhythm, its heartbeat. The braiding's hypnotic, each twist and tuck a small act of creation. You notice the textures, coarse beard hair, smooth bone combs, the occasional glint of amber beads catching the firelight. The men don't talk much, just low murmurs or the occasional chuckle when a braid goes wonky. It's soothing, like the hum of a coffee shop you'd never leave. You're joking to yourself about starting a Viking beard salon. Imagine the Yelp reviews, great braids, Odin approved. But seriously, you're struck by the trust here. These tough guys, axes at their sides, letting others touch their prized beards. It's like letting your best friend borrow your phone, no small thing. The sky's darkening now, stars pricking through like tiny beacons. You're leaning against a wooden post, its grain rough under your palm, and you're picturing how this ritual fits into Viking life. Beards weren't just for show. They were a canvas, a way to say, "This is me," without shouting. You're curious about the patterns. Some braids are tight and simple, others loose and wild. Do they mean something specific, like a secret code? The fire's glow softens the scene, and you're feeling that gentle tug towards sleep, your eyelids heavy. You're wondering how this braiding spread, how it shaped nights across the Norse world. The village hums on the braids taking shape, and you're ready to drift deeper into this quiet craft, letting its rhythm carry you along. You're slipping away from the village fire pit, the crackle of flames fading as you follow a narrow path toward the fjord's edge. The air's crisp now, laced with salt and seaweed, and your boots squelch on damp moss, each step pulling you closer to the water's soft lap. The twilight's deepened, painting the sky a bruised purple, and you're still buzzing from those Viking men braiding their beards, their fingers weaving stories into hair. You're picturing yourself trying to copy their moves, but let's be real, you'd end up with a knot worse than your earbuds after a gym session. Now, you're headed to a quieter spot where the real artistry of Viking beard braiding shines. And it's not just about looking tough, it's about who you are in this windswept world. You reach the fjord, its glassy surface reflecting the last streaks of daylight. A small group of Viking men sits on smooth boulders, their silhouettes sharp against the water's shimmer. They're braiding their beards with a focus that'd make a surgeon jealous, their hands twisting strands into patterns so intricate you're squinting to keep up. This isn't the rough and tumble braiding you saw by the fire. It's deliberate, almost meditative, like they're crafting a shield for their soul. You're settling on a nearby rock, its cold bite seeping through your cloak, and you're struck by how the fjord's calm mirrors their quiet work. The only sounds are the water's gentle slap and the faint clink of beads woven into their beards. Let's anchor this with a famous moment, the Battle of Hearthside in 872 AD. You've heard of it, right? It's when Harald Fairhair united Norway, and his warriors, beards braided tight, fought like they had Thor on speed dial. Those braids weren't just for style, they marked rank and clan, letting allies spot each other in the chaos. You're picturing them now, standing on longships, their braided beards whipping in the wind, a silent shout of loyalty. Historians still argue over how much braiding signaled status. Some say it was a strict code, others think it was more about personal flair. Either way, you're watching these men by the fjord, their braids taking shape, and it's clear each twist carries weight, like a tattoo you can't erase. Now, the weird bit, they used fishbone needles to thread beads into their beards. You're eyeing one Viking, his fingers guiding a thin, ivory-colored needle through his beard, pulling a tiny amber bead into place. It's not just a tool, it's a relic, carved from cod bones, polished smooth by years of use. You're chuckling, imagining threading your hair with a fishbone at your next barber visit. Your stylist would quit on the spot. But here, it's practical. The needle's curve catches the hair just right, and the beads add a glint that catches the fjords. Light. You're wondering if they ever lost a needle in their beard, like dropping a contact lens in a sink. Probably rare. These guys move like they've got eyes in their fingertips. You shift on your rock, the fjord's mist brushing your face, and watch the braiding unfold. One man's beard is a cascade of tight, triple-twist braids, each tipped with a bronze bead that clinks softly. Another's is simpler, a single thick braid woven with red thread, bold against his pale hair. You're starting to see the patterns aren't random, they're like badges, telling stories of voyages or battles won. You're thinking of your own style choices, maybe that one loud tie you wore to a wedding and how they pale next to this. These braids scream identity, and you're tempted to ask for a crash course, but you keep quiet, letting the fjord's hush hold you. The men work in near silence, their breaths puffing faintly in the cool air. Occasionally, one grunts or nudges, another pointing out a loose strand, and you're stifling a laugh. It's like your friend fixing your collar before a photo. The camaraderie's subtle but real, a thread stronger than the ones in their beards. You're joking to yourself about starting a Viking braid tutorial channel. Imagine the thumbnails, Odin's top 5 braid hacks. But seriously, you're struck by how this ritual grounds them, tying them to each other and this rugged land. The fjord's water laps steadily, a rhythm that syncs with their hands. And you're feeling the pull of their world, its quiet strength. The sky's almost black now, stars glinting like scattered coins. You're leaning back, the rocks chill, grounding you. And you're picturing how these braids travel on longships, to markets, into sagas. You're curious about the tools they use, those bone combs and needles that turn hair into art. Do they make them themselves, or trade for them? The men are finishing up, their braids gleaming under the faint starlight. And you're feeling that familiar heaviness, your eyelids drooping. You're wondering how this fjordside ritual fits into the bigger Viking world, how it shapes their nights. The water's hum is softer now, blending with the wind's sigh, and you're ready to follow this trail deeper to see where these braids lead next. The fjord holds you close, its rhythm lulling you, and you're sinking into the Viking night. You're easing away from the fjord's misty edge, the water's soft lap fading as you trudge up a rocky path toward a Viking craftsman's hut. The air's sharp with pine and damp earth, and your boots crunch on gravel, each step stirring a faint whiff of wood smoke. You're still humming from those men braiding their beards by the fjord, their intricate patterns glinting like warrior badges. You're picturing yourself trying to weave a braid that sharp, but honestly, you'd probably end up with a mess worse than your last attempt at knitting. Now, you're headed to see where the tools of this beard craft come from, the combs and beads that turn Viking hair into art, and it's got you curious. How do they make these things in a world without power tools? You reach the hut, its thatched roof sagging under a dusting of frost. Smoke curls lazily from a clay chimney, and you hear the rhythmic tap-tap of a hammer inside, like a heartbeat keeping time. You duck under the low doorway, the warmth of a fire wrapping around you like a blanket. Inside, a craftsman hunches over a workbench, his hands shaping a bone comb with a small iron blade. The hut's cluttered shelves brim with antler scraps, bronze pins, and amber beads that catch the firelight. You're settling on a stool, its wood worn smooth by years of visitors, and you're struck by how this cramped space feels like the heart of Viking style. The craftsman's focus is intense, like he's carving a runestone, not a grooming tool. Let's anchor this with a famous moment, the Oseberg ship burial, discovered from the 9th century. You've heard of it, right? A Viking queen's tomb, packed with treasures like carved sleds and a loom, but also combs delicate, bone-carved combs for hair and beards. Those combs weren't just practical. They were status symbols, buried with the elite to groom their way into Valhalla. You're picturing that queen's warriors, their beards braided tight with tools like these, ready for feasts or fights. Historians still argue over how widespread these combs were. Some say every Viking had one. Others think they were luxury goods. Either way, you're watching this craftsman carve, and it's clear these tools are more than just gear. A piece of Viking soul. Now, the weird bit. They used walrus ivory for some combs. You're squinting at a half-finished comb on the workbench, its creamy surface shimmering under the fire's glow. It's not deer bone, it's ivory, hauled from Arctic hunts, tougher than your phone screen and twice as precious. You're chuckling, imagining brushing your hair with a walrus. Tuscarora friends would think you're channeling Aquaman. But here, it's a flex. A walrus ivory comb in your beard says you've got connections. Maybe even a cousin who wrestled a sea beast. You're wondering if they ever mixed up ivory with bone, like grabbing the wrong coffee cup at work. Probably not. This craftsman's eyes are sharper than his blade. You lean closer, the fire's heat warming your face, and watch the comb take shape. The craftsman's hands move like a painter's, shaving tiny notches for grip, polishing the teeth, until they gleam. Nearby, a pile of amber beads waits, each one drilled with a tiny hole for threading into braids. You're noticing the textures: rough antler, smooth ivory, the bronze pins, faint green patina. It's soothing, like scrolling through a craft video at 2 a.m. You're joking to yourself about opening a Viking Etsy shop. Walrus combs, 5 stars, Odin approved. But seriously, you're struck by the care here. These tools aren't mass-produced. They're born from sweat and skill, each one a small masterpiece. The craftsman pauses, holding the comb to the light, and you catch a whiff of beeswax. He's rubbing into the bone-earthy sweet, like a candle you'd burn to unwind. He grunts, satisfied, and sets it aside, reaching for a bronze pin to engrave next. You're thinking of your own grooming gear, maybe that cheap plastic comb you've had since high school, and how it pales next to this. These tools carry stories. The hunter who felled the walrus, the trader who brought the amber, the warrior whose beard they'll tame. You're tempted to ask for one, but you keep quiet, respecting the hut's calm rhythm. The fire crackles, casting shadows that dance on the walls, and you're picturing these tools in action: combs gliding through coarse beards, pins securing braids before a voyage. You're curious about who uses them, not just the men, but maybe others in the village. Do women wield these combs, weaving their own art? The craftsman's hammer taps on, steady as a lullaby, and you're feeling that gentle heaviness, your eyelids drooping. You're joking to yourself about needing a walrus comb for your next bad hair. Imagine the looks at the office. The hut's glow softens, the air warm and still, and you're ready to follow this craft's trail to see who shapes the beards these tools touch next. The fire's hum pulls you deeper, and you're sinking into the Viking night. You're slipping out of the craftsman's smoky hut, the tap of his hammer fading as you weave through the Viking village, the night air sharp with frost and pine. Your boots crunch on frozen grass, and you're still marveling at those walrus ivory combs, their creamy glow lingering in your mind like a half-remembered dream. You're picturing yourself trying to carve one, but let's be honest, you'd probably end up with a splinter and a bad mood. Now, you're headed toward a quiet corner of the settlement, where Viking women weave their own magic into the art of beard braiding. And it's not just about style, it's about protection, power, and a touch of the divine. You reach a cluster of longhouses, their thatched roofs glinting under a sliver of moon. A soft glow spills from one doorway, and you hear the murmur of voices, low and rhythmic. Like a lullaby you can't quite catch. You duck inside, the warmth of a hearth wrapping around you, smelling of wood smoke and dried herbs. A group of women sits in a circle on woven mats, their hands busy with bone combs and threads, braiding the beards of men who kneel before them. The scene's intimate, almost sacred, and you're settling against a wooden beam, its grain rough under your palm, feeling like you've stumbled into a ritual older than the stars. These women aren't just grooming, they're weaving charms. And you're curious to see how. Let's anchor this with a famous moment. The Viking settlement at Birka, thriving in the 9th century. You've heard of it, right? A trade hub in Sweden where goods and ideas flowed like mead at a feast. Women, they weren't just homemakers. They were power players, often buried with keys and combs, symbols of authority and artistry. You're picturing them now, braiding beards with the same focus they'd use to seal a trade deal. Historians still argue over how much women shaped Viking culture. Some say they were equal partners. Others think their influence was quieter, woven into rituals like this. Either way, you're watching these women work, their fingers threading magic into hair, and it's clear they're the heartbeat of this moment. Now, the weird bit. They wove tiny runestones into beards as protective charms. You're squinting at a woman slipping a pebble, etched with a faint rune, into a warrior's braid, securing it with red thread. It's not just decor, it's a talisman meant to shield him from storms or steel. You're chuckling, imagining tucking a lucky charm into your hair before a big presentation. Your boss would think you've lost it. But here, it's deadly serious. A rune for Thor might mean the difference between life and death at sea. You're wondering if they ever mixed up the runes, like sending the wrong emoji in a text. Probably not. These women's hands move with a priestess's precision. You lean closer, the hearth's glow warming your face, and watch the braiding unfold. One woman, her silver hair tied back, weaves a warrior's beard with steady hands, threading a tiny amber bead alongside the runestone. Her fingers dance, twisting strands into a pattern that looks like a river's flow, each knot deliberate. Another woman, younger, hums softly as she braids, her comb gliding through coarse hair like a ship through calm waters. You're noticing the textures, the beads' smooth glow, the thread's faint sheen, the rune's rough edge. It's soothing, like watching a pottery video at midnight. And you're sinking into the rhythm, your breath slowing. The men kneel, quietly, their eyes half closed, trusting these women with their prized beards. It's a rare softness in this rugged world, like letting your best friend fix your tie before a date. You're joking to yourself about starting a Viking spa. Day runestone braids, 5 stars, Fragio proved. But seriously, you're struck by the bond here. These women aren't just braiding hair. They're weaving safety, strength, maybe even love. You're thinking of your own rituals, maybe braiding a kid's hair or tying a scarf. Just rethand how they carry that same care, that same quiet power. The hearth crackles, casting shadows that flicker on the walls, and you're picturing these braids in action and longships, in battles, under stormy skies. You're curious about what these charms mean, how they're chosen. Do the women decide, or the warriors? The older woman pauses, tying off a braid with a knot so perfect it could hold a ship's sail. She murmurs something, maybe a prayer, maybe a blessing, and the warrior nods, his face calm. You're feeling that gentle heaviness, your eyelids drooping, and you're joking to yourself about needing a runestone for your next stressful day. Imagine the calm it'd bring. The longhouse's hum is softer now, the women's voices blending with the fire's sigh, and you're ready to follow this ritual's trail to see where these charmed braids go next. The warmth holds you close, and you're drifting into the Viking night. You're easing out of the longhouse's warm glow, the women's soft hums fading as you step into the biting night air, your breath puffing in clouds. The village sleeps under a starry sky, but you're following a rocky trail toward a cliffside. Camp, the sea's distant roar pulling you forward. Your boots scrape on frost-slick stones, and you're still wrapped in the memory of those runestone charmed braids, their tiny runes glinting like whispered prayers. You're picturing yourself trying to weave one, but let's be real, probably not your fingers into a mess worse than your last DIY haircut. Now, you're headed to a warrior's camp where beard braiding turns fierce. A ritual to steal Viking hearts before battle, and it's got you tingling with anticipation. You reach the camp, perched on a cliff overlooking the churning sea, its waves crashing like Thor's hammer. Tents of hide and wool flap in the wind, and a bonfire spits sparks into the night, casting jagged shadows. Warriors huddle close, their faces etched with focus as they braid their beards tight, fingers moving fast, like they're arming for war. The air's thick with salt and sweat, and you're settling on a wind-worn boulder, its chill seeping through your cloak. This isn't the calm braiding of the fjord or the sacred weaving of the longhouse. It's raw, urgent, a final act before blood and steel. You're feeling the weight of it, like you're about to step into a ring with no gloves. Let's anchor this with a famous moment. The Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066. You've heard of it, right? Vikings under Harold Hardrada clashed with Anglo-Saxons, a brutal fight that marked the end of the Viking Age's big swings. Those warriors braided their beards before battle, not for looks, but to signal unity and defiance, their hair woven as tight as their resolve. You're picturing them now, standing on this cliff, beards locked into braids that screamed, "We're here to win or feast in Valhalla." Historians still argue over how much braiding was about morale versus tradition. Some say it was a battle cry in hair, others think it was just habit. Either way, you're watching these men braid, their hands steady despite the wind's howl, and it's clear this ritual is their armor. Now, the weird bit, they used ash from sacred fires to darken their braids. You're squinting at a warrior, rubbing ash from the bonfire into his beard, his fingers smudging the strands black, like he's painting war stripes. It's not just grit, it's a blessing, drawn from a fire kindled with oak from a Thor-hallowed grove. You're chuckling, imagining smearing campfire soot in your hair before a big meeting your co-workers would stage an intervention. But here, it's potent. The ash ties them to the gods, a mark of strength for the fight ahead. You're wondering if they ever sneezed from the dust, like getting glitter in your eyes at a craft party. Probably not, these guys are too focused. Their eyes glinting like steel. You shift on your boulder. The seas spray misting your face, and watch the braiding race against the night. One warrior's beard is a grid of tight double-twist braids, each locked with a bronze pin that clinks in the wind. Another's is simpler, a single thick braid smeared with ash, bold against his scarred face. You're noticing the tools, bone, combs flashing, iron pins glinting, the ashes faint shimmer under firelight. It's intense, like watching a pit crew prep a race car, and you're sinking into the rhythm, your pulse slowing despite the camp's edge. You're joking to yourself about needing an ash braid for your next deadline. Imagine the focus it'd bring. The warriors work in low grunts, their hands swift but sure, like they've done this 100 times. One nudges another, fixing a loose braid, and you're stifling a laugh. It's like your buddy adjusting your tie before a speech. The bond's unspoken but ironclad, a trust forged in fire and blood. You're thinking of your own high stakes. Moments may be a big exam or a tough talk, and how these braids feel like their version of psyching up. You're tempted to join in, but you keep still, letting the winds howl and the fires crackle. Fill the silence. You're joking to yourself about starting a Viking battle braid boot camp. Sign up for grit and glory. The stars burn brighter now. The seas roar a steady pulse. You're leaning back, the boulders chill grounding you, and you're picturing these braids in battle, whipping in the wind, ash-streaked, unbreakable. You're curious about what happens next, how these warriors carry their braids into the fight. Do they hold up or fray under the chaos? The bonfire's glow softens, the warriors' hands slowing as they finish, and you're feeling that familiar heaviness, your eyelids drooping. You're wondering how this fierce ritual fits into the Viking world, how it shapes their courage. The camp's rhythm is fading, the sea's song lulling you, and you're ready to follow these warriors' trail to see where their braided strength leads. The night holds you tight, and you're drifting deeper into its wild embrace. You're slipping away from the cliffside camp. The sea's roar softening as you trek back toward the Viking village, the night air crisp with frost and pine. Your boots crunch on frozen earth, and you're still tingling from those warriors, braiding their ash-streaked beards, their fierce focus lingering like a battle cry in your mind. You're picturing yourself trying to braid under that kind of pressure, but honestly, you'd probably end up with a tangle worse than your last attempt at untangling Christmas lights. Now, you're headed to a longhouse where braiding turns. Warm and communal, a family affair that weaves stories as much as hair, and it's got you craving the glow of a hearth. You reach the village, its longhouses huddled under a starry sky, their thatched roofs dusted with snow. A golden light spills from one, and you hear laughter and the clink of wooden cups, like a party you're dying to crash. You duck inside, the warmth hitting you like a hug, laced with the scent of roasted barley and wool. Families are gathered. Around a crackling hearth, men, women, and kids sprawled on benches and furs, braiding each other's beards with easy grins. It's not the intense craft of warriors or the sacred touch of the women's charms. This is homey, messy, full of love and teasing, like a Viking version of your family game night. You're settling on a fur rug, its softness cushioning you, and you're soaking in the longhouse's cozy hum. Let's anchor this with a famous moment. The settlement of Greenland around 874 AD by Eric the Red. You've heard of him, right? Banished from Iceland, he sailed west, founding a Norse colony where families carved out lives in icy fjords. Those longhouses were like this one, where braiding beards became a nightly ritual, a way to bond in the endless winter nights. You're picturing them now, huddling by fires, fingers weaving braids as they swapped tales of sea voyages or trolls. Historians still argue over how much braiding strengthened Viking families. Some say it was glue for community. Others think it was just practical grooming. Either way, you're watching these folks braid, their laughter bouncing off the walls, and it's clear this ritual is the heartbeat of their home. Now, the weird bit, they used braided beard strands as keepsakes. You're eyeing a woman snipping a tiny braid from her husband's beard, tying it with thread and tucking it into a leather pouch. It's not just a trim, it's a token, a piece of him to carry when he sails or fights, like a medieval locket. You're chuckling, imagining keeping a lock of your friend's hair in your wallet. Your buddies would call you a creep. But here, it's tender. A braid might be all she has if the sea claims him. You're wondering if they ever mixed up whose braid was whose, like grabbing the wrong scarf from a coat rack. Probably rare these folks know their loved ones' hair like you know your playlist. You lean closer, the hearth's glow warming your face, and watch the braiding unfold. A father braids his son's scruffy beard, his big hands gentle as he teases the boy for squirming. A girl, maybe 10, weaves a loose braid into her uncle's beard, giggling when it flops sideways. You're noticing the tools. Bone combs past, a round amber beads glinting, a bronze pin catching the firelight. It's soothing, like watching a knitting stream at 3 a.m, and you're sinking into the rhythm, your breath slowing. You're joking to yourself about starting a Viking family braid night. Imagine the chaos with your cousins. The longhouse hums with life, voices overlapping in a soft chatter. One man boasts about his braid surviving a storm at sea, and everyone laughs when his wife points out a bald patch. It's a warmth you feel in your bones, like the best holiday dinner you've ever had. You're thinking of your own family traditions, maybe movie nights or baking cookies, and how they carry that same messy love. You're tempted to join in, but you stay put, letting the fires crackle and the braid's rhythm hold you. You're joking to yourself about needing a Viking beard to fit in. Imagine the looks at your next Zoom call. The fire spits a spark, and you're picturing these braids beyond the longhouse, in markets, on ships, in sagas. You're curious about what the patterns mean, those tight twists and loose loops. Are they random, or do they tell a story? A woman finishes a braid, tying it with red thread, and the man grins, ruffling her hair. You're feeling that gentle heaviness, your eyelids drooping, and you're joking to yourself about needing a braid keepsake for your next trip. Imagine the TSA's confusion. The longhouse's glow softens, the voices fading into a hum, and you're ready to follow this ritual's trail, to see what these braids mean outside the hearth's warmth. The fire's rhythm pulls you deeper, and you're drifting into the Viking night. You're easing out of the longhouse's cozy glow, the laughter and clink of cups fading as you step into the crisp night, your breath fogging in the chilly air. The village sleeps under a starry canopy, and your boots crunch on snowed paths as you head toward a coastal hamlet, the faint tang of salt pulling you forward. You're still wrapped in the warmth of those family braiding moments, the messy, loving braids like a hug you can't shake off. You're picturing yourself trying to weave a kid's beard, but let's be real, probably end up with a knot worse than your last attempt at untangling headphone wires. Now, you're headed to a place where Viking braids carry deeper meaning, signaling loyalty and legacy. And it's got you curious about what stories these strands hold. You reach the hamlet, a cluster of longhouses perched above a rocky shore, the sea's steady churn filling the air. Dawn's just breaking, painting the sky a soft pink. And you spot a group of Vikings gathered in a clearing, their beards glinting with intricate braids under the early light. They're not just grooming, they're crafting patterns that mark their clan, their deeds, like a living tapestry of who they are. You're settling on a driftwood log, its surface smooth and cold, and you're struck by how the sea's rhythm seems to sync with their hands, each twist a note in a silent song. This isn't the fierce braiding of warriors or the tender touch of family, it's a declaration, and you're eager to decode it. Let's anchor this with a famous moment. The founding of Dublin by Vikings in the 9th century. You've heard of it, right? Norse settlers turned a muddy trading post into a powerhouse, and their braided beards were like flags, shouting clan pride in markets and battles. You're picturing them now, standing in this hamlet, their braids a bold claim of identity amid strangers. Historians still argue over how much braids defined Viking social bonds. Some say they were strict clan markers. Others think they were more about personal swagger. Either way, you're watching these men braid, their fingers weaving patterns, with a focus that'd make a coder jealous. And it's clear these strands are more than hair, their history. Now, the weird bit, some braids mimicked rune shapes. You're squinting at a Viking whose beard is woven into a series of tight, angular twists, echoing the sharp lines of a runestone script. It's not just style, it's a nod to sacred symbols, maybe invoking Odin's wisdom or Thor's strength. You're chuckling, imagining shaping your hair into emojis for luck. Your barber would think you've lost it. But here, it's potent. A rune braid could mark a chieftain or a poet, a way to carry the gods' favor. You're wondering if they ever flubbed the pattern, like misspelling a tattoo. Probably rare. These guys braid like they're carving their own saga. You shift on the log, the sea's mist brushing your face, and watch the braiding unfold. One man's beard is a cascade of double twist braids, each shaped like the rune for strength, tipped with a bronze bead that clinks softly. Another's is simpler, a single braid mimicking the rune for journey, bold against his weathered face. You're noticing the tools, bone combs gliding, red threads glinting, the beads' faint shimmer in the dawn. It's soothing, like watching a calligraphy video at midnight, and you're sinking into the rhythm, your breath slowing. You're joking to yourself about needing a rune braid for your next big decision. Imagine the clarity it'd bring. The men work in low murmurs, their hands steady despite the morning chill. One points out a braid's curve, mimicking a rune's angle, and another nods, adjusting his own. You're stifling a laugh. It's like your friend tweaking your tie before a photo, but with higher stakes. The bond's quiet but strong, a shared language woven into their hair. You're thinking of your own markers, maybe a favorite jacket or a team jersey, and how they pale next to this. These braids are a shout of belonging, and you're tempted to ask what yours would say. But you keep still, letting the sea's hum hold you. The dawn's light strengthens, gilding the braids with a soft glow. You're leaning back, the logs chill grounding you. And you're picturing these patterns in action on longships, in markets etched in memory. You're curious about how these braids travel, how they're shared beyond this hamlet. Do they change in foreign lands? A man finishes his braid, tying it with a thread that matches the rune's hue, and you're feeling that gentle heaviness, your eyelids drooping. You're joking to yourself about needing a clan braid for your next group project. Imagine the team spirit. The hamlet's rhythm softens, the sea's song lulling you, and you're ready to follow this trail to see where these rune braids lead next. The dawn wraps you close, and you're drifting into the Viking morning. You're slipping away from the coastal hamlet, the sea's soft churn fading as you follow a muddy trade path inland, the air heavy with damp earth and pine. Your boots squelch on the trail, and you're still humming from those rune-shaped braids, their angular patterns lingering like a riddle you can't quite solve. You're picturing yourself trying to weave a rune into your hair. But let's be honest, it'd probably end up with a knot worse than your last attempt at untangling a phone charger. Now, you're headed to a bustling Viking market where braiding techniques are swapped like spices, blending Norse craft with foreign flair, and it's got you buzzing with the promise of new styles. You reach the market, a sprawl of stalls nestled in a valley, the air alive with shouts, laughter, and the bleat of goats. Smoke rises from cooking fires, mingling with the scent of roasted fish and leather, and you weave through crowds of Vikings, their beards a riot of braids, some tight and Norse, others loose and exotic. Merchants from far-off lands, Arabs, even Rooshawk, their wares, amber beads, silk threads, bronze pins glinting in the midday sun. You're drawn to a corner where a Viking trader and a foreign merchant haggle over braiding styles. Not goods, their hands mimicking twists and knots. You're settling on a wooden crate, its splinters catching your cloak, and you're struck by how this market feels like a crossroads of the Viking world. Let's anchor this with a famous moment. The Viking trade network's peak in the 9th century, centered on hubs like Hiddeby. You've heard of it, right? A Danish port where Norse traders swapped furs for silver, and ideas flowed as freely as mead. Braiding styles were part of that exchange, with Vikings adopting Frankish plaits or Russ knots, weaving foreign flair into their beards. You're picturing them now, standing in this market, their braids a patchwork of cultures, shouting Viking but whispering world. Historians still argue over how much foreign influence shaped Viking style. Some say it was a flood, others think Norse braids held firm. Either way, you're watching these men trade techniques, their hands dancing like they're weaving a saga. And it's clear this market is a melting pot. Now, the weird bit, they used colored clay to dye braid threads. You're squinting at a merchant smearing a red clay paste onto a thread, ready to weave it into a Viking's beard for a pop of color. It's not just dye, it's a trade secret hauled from Frankish riverbeds, vibrant as a sunset and tough enough to last a voyage. You're chuckling, imagining dyeing your hair with mud before a night out your friends would stage an intervention. But here, it's a flex. A red threaded braid says you've got connections, maybe even a Frankish ally. You're wondering if they ever smudged the wrong color, like grabbing blue paint instead of red. Probably rare these traders know their craft like you know your coffee order. You lean closer, the crate creaking under you, and watch the braiding exchange unfold. The Viking trader, his beard a grid of Norse twists, learns a loose Russ plait, his fingers fumbling at first. The foreign merchant, his own beard a wild cascade, shows off a Frankish knot, tight and elegant, threaded with that red clay. You're noticing the textures, the thread's faint sheen, the bead's amber glow, the pin's bronze glint in the sun. It's soothing, like watching a travel vlog at 2 a.m., and you're sinking into the rhythm, your breath slowing. You're joking to yourself about starting a Viking braid fusion. Norse meets Russ. 5 stars. The market hums, voices clashing in a dozen tongues, Norse, Arabic, Frankish. One Viking laughs as his new braid flops, and the merchant claps him on the back, like your buddy hyping your bad dance moves. It's a warmth you feel in your chest, like finding a new favorite cafe. You're thinking of your own style, swaps maybe that one time you tried a trendy haircut and how they pale next to this. These braids are a bridge, linking worlds. And you're tempted to try one, but you keep still, letting the market's buzz hold you. You're joking to yourself about needing a clay-dyed braid for your next trip. Imagine the Instagram likes. The sun climbs higher, warming your face, and you're picturing these braids beyond the market and longships, in foreign ports, in tales. You're curious about how these new styles take root, how they change the Norse look. Do they last or fade like a bad trend? A Viking finishes his braid, the red thread blazing, and you're feeling that gentle heaviness, your eyelids drooping. You're joking to yourself about needing a market braid for your next Zoom call. Imagine the reactions. The market's rhythm softens, the shouts fading into a hum, and you're ready to follow this trail, to see where these blended braids lead next. The valley wraps you close, and you're drifting into the Viking day. You're easing away from the market's lively buzz, the shouts of traders fading as you climb a grassy hill toward a quiet clearing, the air sharp with pine and distant sea salt. Your boots sink into soft earth, and you're still humming from those colorful braids at the market, the red clay threads glinting like a bold new chapter in Viking style. You're picturing yourself trying to weave a Frankish knot, but let's be honest, probably end up with a tangle worse than your last attempt at a friendship bracelet. Now, you're headed to a sacred spot where Vikings braid their beards under the aurora borealis, tying their craft to the gods, and it's got you tingling with the promise of something otherworldly. You reach the clearing, a wide sweep of frost-kissed grass ringed by dark pines, the sky above a deep indigo swirled with ribbons of green and purple light. The northern lights dance, their glow casting an eerie shimmer over a group of Vikings gathered in a loose circle, their beards half braided, glinting with beads and threads. They're not just grooming, they're weaving their souls into the cosmos, each braid a prayer to the gods who paint the sky. You're settling on a flat stone, its chill biting through your cloak, and you're struck by how the auroras hum almost audible, like a faint song syncs with their hands. This isn't the market's hustle or the longhouse's warmth, it's spiritual, and you're ready to feel its magic. Let's anchor this with a famous moment. The Viking exploration of Vinland around 1000 AD. You've heard of Leif Erikson, right? He sailed to North America centuries before Columbus, and his crew likely braided their beards under skies like this, seeking the gods' favor for their bold voyage. You're picturing them now, standing in this clearing, their braids glowing under the aurora, a silent vow to return home. Historians still argue over how much spirituality drove Viking exploration. Some say it was all about loot, others think the gods were their compass. Either way, you're watching these men braid, their fingers steady under the shifting lights, and it's clear this ritual is a bridge to the divine. Now, the weird bit, they wove starlight into their braids, so they believed. You're squinting at a Viking threading a tiny crystal bead into his beard, its facets catching the aurora's glow like a captured star. It's not just decor, it's a charm, meant to hold the sky's light, a piece of the gods' power to guide them through storms or battles. You're chuckling, imagining sticking a glow-in-the-dark star in your hair for luck. Your friends would think you're planning a rave. But here, it's sacred. A crystal braided beard might call Freya, favor, or Odin's wisdom. You're wondering if they ever dropped a bead in the grass, like losing a stud earring at a party. Probably rare these guys move with a seer's focus. You shift on the stone, the aurora's light brushing your face, and watch the braiding unfold. One man's beard is a cascade of loose braids, each tipped with a crystal that sparkles green and purple, mirroring the sky. Another's is tighter, a single braid woven with silver thread, bold against his dark hair. You're noticing the tools, bone combs flashing, threads glinting, the crystal's faint hum under the lights. It's mesmerizing, like watching a time-lapse of stars at 3 a.m. And you're sinking into the rhythm, your breath slowing. You're joking to yourself about needing a starlight braid for your next big dream. Imagine the inspiration it'd spark. The men work in near silence, their breaths puffing faintly in the cold. One murmurs a low chant, maybe a prayer to the Vanir, and another nods, adjusting his braid's crystal. You're stifling a laugh, it's like your friend tweaking your playlist for the vibe, but with cosmic stakes. The bond's quiet but deep, a shared reverence for the sky's dance. You're thinking of your own moments of awe, maybe a meteor shower or a perfect sunset, and how they pale next to this. These braids are a vow to the gods, and you're tempted to whisper your own wish, but you keep still, letting the aurora's hum hold you. You're joking to yourself about starting a Viking stargazing braid club. Sign up for celestial style. The northern lights pulse brighter, bathing the clearing in a soft glow. You're leaning back, the stones chill grounding you, and you're picturing these braids in action and voyages, in rituals etched in myth. You're curious about how these celestial charms endure, how they shape the Vikings' nights. Do they glow in storms or fade in daylight? A man finishes his braid, the crystal blazing, and you're feeling that gentle heaviness, your eyelids drooping. You're joking to yourself about needing an aurora braid for your next late-night brainstorm. Imagine the creativity, the clearings. Rhythm softens, the aurora's song lulling you, and you're ready to follow this trail, to see where these starlit braids lead next. The night wraps you close, and you're drifting into the Viking sky. You're slipping away from the aurora-lit clearing, the northern light's soft hum fading as you trudge down a snowy slope toward a Viking village nestled in a frozen valley. The air's biting, laced with ice and pine, and your boots crunch through fresh snow, each step kicking up a powdery cloud. You're still glowing from those starlit braids, their crystal beads shimmering like captured pieces of the sky. You're picturing yourself trying to weave one under that cosmic glow. But let's be real, probably end up with a knot worse than your last attempt at untangling a garden hose. Now, you're headed to a winter-bound settlement where braiding beards becomes a battle against the cold. And it's got you curious about how Vikings keep their style sharp in a world of frost and wind. You reach the village, its longhouses half buried in snow, their thatched roofs gleaming under a pale midday sun. Smoke curls from chimneys, and you hear the muffled clink of tools and the low murmur of voices braving the chill. You duck into a longhouse, the warmth of a hearth hitting you like a soft wave, smelling of wool and melted tallow. A group of Vikings huddles near the fire, their hands working stiffly to braid frozen beards, using warmed combs and oils to tame the ice-crusted strands. This isn't the sacred braiding under the aurora or the lively swaps of the marketits. A gritty struggle, a fight to keep tradition alive in winter's grip. You're settling on a bench, its wood worn smooth, and you're struck by the quiet determination in their frost-reddened faces. Let's anchor this with a famous moment. The Viking overwintering in Newfoundland around 1000 AD, you've heard of Lonso meadows, right? Norse explorers hunkered down in Vinland, facing brutal winters far from home, and braiding their beards was a small act of defiance against the cold. You're picturing them now, in a longhouse like this, there, breath fogging as they wove braids to stay grounded, to feel human in a frozen world. Historians still argue over how much braiding was practical versus cultural in those harsh winters. Some say it kept beards from freezing solid. Others think it was pure ritual. Either way, you're watching these men braid, their fingers clumsy with cold, and it's clear this craft is a lifeline, warmer than the fire itself. Now, the weird bit. They warmed their combs in seal blubber oil. You're squinting at a Viking dipping a bone comb into a small clay pot of oily liquid, its surface shimmering by the firelight. It's not just grease, it's seal fat, rendered down to a slick warmth that softens frozen hair and smells like a mix of fish and wax. You're chuckling, imagining slathering your hair with blubber before a winter commute. Your co-workers would flee the elevator. But here, it's genius. The oil thaws the beard, letting the comb glide through like a ship on calm seas. You're wondering if they ever spilled the pot, like knocking over your coffee mug at work. Probably rare. These guys handle their tools like warriors wielding axes. You lean closer, the hearth's glow warming your cheeks, and watch the braiding unfold. One man's beard is a stiff mass of ice, but he's patiently thawing it, his comb leaving trails of melted droplets. Another's beard is half braided, a tight twist locked with a bronze pin, the oil giving it a faint sheen. You're noticing the textures, the comb's smooth bone, the oil's greasy glint, the pin's cold metal under firelight. It's soothing, like watching a woodworking video at 1 a.m. And you're sinking into the rhythm, your breath slowing. You're joking to yourself about needing a blubber comb for your next snow day. Imagine the smoothness. The men work in low grunts, their hands sluggish but stubborn, like they're wrestling the winter itself. One mutters about a braid snapping in the cold, and another chuckles, passing him the oil pot. You're stifling a laugh. It's like your friend loaning you a scarf when you're shivering. The bond's quiet but solid, a warmth that cuts through the frost. You're thinking of your own winter battles, maybe scraping ice off your car or trudging through slush, and how they pale next to this. These braids are a stand against the cold, and you're tempted to try one, but you keep still, letting the hearth's crackle hold you. You're joking to yourself about starting a Viking winter braid tutorial. Sign up for frostproof style. The fire spits a spark, and you're picturing these braids beyond the longhouse in blizzards, on hunts, in sagas. You're curious about how they hold up, how the oil and pins fare in a storm. Do they freeze again, or stay soft? A man finishes his braid, the pin glinting, and you're feeling that gentle heaviness, your eyelids drooping. You're joking to yourself about needing a blubber braid for your next polar vortex. Imagine the resilience. The longhouse's glow softens, the voices fading into a hum, and you're ready to follow this trail, to see where these winter braids lead next. The hearth wraps you close, and you're drifting into the Viking cold. You're easing out of the longhouse's smoky warmth, the crackle of the hearth fading as you step into the biting winter air, your breath fogging in the snowy village. The crunch of your boots on fresh powder echoes, and you're still warmed by those frost-battled braids, their oil-slicked strands glinting like defiance against the cold. You're picturing yourself trying to braid in that icy longhouse, but let's be real, you'd probably end up with frozen fingers and a knot, worse than your last attempt at untangling a kite string. Now, you're headed to a firelit gathering where a skald spins tales of legendary braided beards, weaving them into Viking lore. And it's got you itching to hear the stories behind the strands. You reach a clearing at the village's edge, where a bonfire roars under a starry sky, its flames casting a golden glow over a crowd of Vikings bundled in furs. The air's sharp with pine and charred wood, and you weave through the throng. Their beards, a mix of tight braids and wild tangles, glinting with beads and pins. A skald stands on a flat stone, his voice rising and falling like waves, chanting a poem about heroes whose braids were as famed as their deeds. You're settling on a snow-dusted log, its chill seeping through your cloak, and you're struck by how the fire's rhythm seems to pulse with the skald's words, each verse a thread in a living saga. This isn't the gritty braiding of winter, or the sacred weaves under the aurora-lit storytelling, and you're ready to lose yourself in it. Let's anchor this with a famous moment, the saga of Ragnar Lothbrok, the legendary 9th century Viking hero. You've heard of him, right? His tales of true, half-myth-filled Norse sagas, and his braided beard, said to rival Odin's, was a symbol of his cunning and charisma. You're picturing him now, standing in this clearing, his braids swaying as he rallied warriors, his hair a banner of legend. You can be picturing him. Historians often still argue over how much of Ragnar's saga is fact. Some say his braids were a skald's flourish. Others think they marked his real status. Either way, you're watching, you're listening to this skald, his voice weaving tales of braided heroes. And you feel that it's clear these stories are more than myth. They're the soul of Viking pride. Now, the weird bit. They threw braided hair into the fire as offerings. You're catching a glint as a listener snips a tiny braid from his beard, tossing it into the flames with a sizzle, an offering to the gods to bless the skald's tale. It's not just hair, it's a sacrifice, a piece of their identity too. Honor Freya or Thor, tying their braids to the divine. You're chuckling, imagining burning your hair at a concert to hype the band your friends would call you unhinged. But here it's potent. A singed braid might spark a hero's favor, ensuring their saga lives on. You're wondering if they ever hesitated, like pausing before posting a bold story online. Probably not. These folks commit like warriors to their lore. You lean closer, the fire's warmth kissing your face, and you're starting to watch the skald's tale unfold. He sings of a chieftain whose triple braid beard withstood a storm at sea, each not blessed by nougat. His hands sweep, painting battles and feasts, his own beard woven with silver threads and amber beads that catch the firelight. You're noticing the crowds sway. They lean in, murmuring, some braiding their own beards as they listen, their fingers mimicking the skald's rhythm. Another tale tells of a warrior's braid, cut by a rival, sparking a feud that burned a village red. It's hypnotic, like a podcast you'd binge at midnight, and you're sinking into the rhythm, your breath slowing. You're joking to yourself about needing a skald to hype your next haircut. Imagine the epic vibes. The skald's voice dips, weaving a softer verse about a hero's braid kept by his widow, and the crowd hushes, eyes glinting with emotion. One Viking nudges another, pointing to his own braid, and you're stifling a laugh. It's like your buddy showing off a new tattoo. The bond's deep, a shared love for tales that make their braids immortal. You're thinking of your own stories, maybe a family legend or a viral post, and how they pale next to this. These braids are sagas, and you're tempted to whisper your own tale. But you keep still, letting the fire's crackle hold you. You're joking to yourself about starting a Viking saga open mic. Sign up for beard lore. The stars blaze brighter. The bonfires glow, softening the crowd's rugged faces. You're leaning back, the logs chill, grounding you, and you're picturing these braided heroes and longships in Valhalla, etched in song. You're curious about how these tales spread, how they shape the Vikings' nights. Do they inspire new braids, or live only in words? The skald finishes a verse, his voice trailing like smoke. And you're feeling that gentle heaviness, your eyelids drooping. You're joking to yourself about needing a saga braid for your next big moment. Imagine the legend it'd spark. The clearing's rhythm fades, the fire's song lulling you, and you're ready to follow this trail to see where these storied braids lead next. The night wraps you tight, and you're drifting into the Viking firelight. You're slipping away from the firelit clearing, the skald's haunting verses still echoing as you trudge through the snowy village. The crunch of your boots muffled by the quiet night. The air's crisp, laced with wood smoke and frost, and you're still wrapped in the glow of those storied braids, their heroic tales woven into Viking legend like threads of gold. You're picturing yourself trying to weave a saga-worthy braid, but let's be honest, it'd probably end up with a not worse than your last attempt at untangling a pair of earphones after a long flight. Now, you're headed to a grand feast, hall where Viking beards shine in their finest hour. A dazzling display of artistry and pride, and it's got you eager for the spectacle of a Norse celebration. You reach the feast hall, a massive longhouse aglow with torchlight, its carved beams looming under a snow-dusted roof. The roar of laughter and clinking horns spills out into the night, and you push through a heavy door, the warmth hitting you like a wave, thick with the scent of roasted boar, mead, and pine. Inside, the hall's packed with Vikings men and women in vibrant tunics, their beards braided so elaborately they could outshine a royal crown. Tables groan under platters of fish, bread, and steaming stews, and musicians pluck lyres in a corner, their notes weaving through the din. You're settling on a bench, its wood polished by countless feasts, and you're struck by how this hall feels like the heart of Viking glory. Every braid, a badge of joy and status. Let's anchor this with a famous moment, the Yule Feast, a midwinter celebration that lit up Viking halls in the 9th century. You've heard of it, right? A week-long party to honor the gods and defy the winter's dark, where beards were braided to dazzle, signaling wealth and loyalty to the clan. You're picturing them now, raising horns in this hall, their braids glinting with beads and threads, a loud declaration of we're alive. Historians still argue over how much Yule shaped Viking social bonds. Some say it was the glue of their culture. Others think it was just an excuse to drink. Either way, you're watching these Vikings braid and feast, their hands and voices alive with pride. And it's clear this ritual is the pulse of their world. Now, the weird bit, they wove edible threads into their braids for feasts. You're squinting at a warrior threading a thin, honey-dipped flax string into his beard, its golden sheen catching the torchlight. It's not just a treat, meant to be plucked and shared during the feast, a sweet gesture of kinship. You're chuckling, imagining weaving candy floss into your hair. For a party, your friends would think you're starting a dessert buffet. But here, it's a delight. A honey-threaded braid sparks laughter and bonds, like passing around a bowl of chips. You're wondering if they ever got sticky fingers, like spilling dip at a barbecue. Probably rare, these folks braid with a feastmaster's precision. You lean closer, the bench creaking under you, and watch the braiding unfold. One man's beard is a masterpiece of triple twist braids, each laced with honeyed flax that gleams like liquid gold, tipped with amber beads. A woman nearby weaves her husband's beard with silver threads and edible strings, her fingers dancing as she laughs at his mock complaints. You're noticing the textures, the flax's sticky sheen, the beads' warm glow, the silver's cool glint in the torchlight. It's festive, like watching a holiday baking show at midnight, and you're sinking into the rhythm, your breath slowing. You're joking to yourself about needing a honey braid for your next potluck. Imagine the crowd, pleaser. The hall hums with life, voices clashing in toasts and tales. One Viking boasts about his braid outshining a chieftain's, and his friends roar, splashing mead. You're stifling a laugh, it's like your buddy hyping their new outfit at a reunion. The bond's loud but deep, a shared love for this night of glory. You're thinking of your own celebrations, maybe a birthday bash or a holiday dinner rand. How they pale next to this. These braids are a shout of joy, and you're tempted to join the toast, but you keep still, letting the halls roar hold you. You're joking to yourself about starting a Viking feast braid bar sign up for edible style. The torches flicker, casting warm shadows on the walls, and you're picturing these braids in the feasts, chaos swaying in dances, glistening in toasts, etched in memory. You're curious about how they hold up, how the honeyed threads fare in the revelry. Do they unravel or stay sweet? A man finishes his braid, the flax blazing under the light, and you're feeling that gentle heaviness, your eyelids drooping. You're joking to yourself about needing a feast braid for your next big night. Imagine the vibe it'd bring. The hall's rhythm softens, the lyre's notes lulling you, and you're ready to follow this trail to see where these festive braids lead next. The warmth wraps you close, and you're drifting into the Viking feast. You're slipping out of the feast hall's roaring warmth, the clink of horns and laughter fading as you step into the quiet night, the air sharp with frost and the faint tanks of snow. Your boots crunch on a frozen path winding through the Viking village, and you're still buzzing from those honey-threaded braids, their golden gleam lingering like the aftertaste of mead. You're picturing yourself trying to weave an edible braid, but let's be real, you'd probably end up with a sticky mess worse than your last attempt at caramel popcorn. Now, you're headed to a changing settlement where the art of beard braiding is starting to fade, touched by new influences, and it's got you curious about how traditions shift under the weight of time. You reach a settlement on the edge of a fjord, its longhouses looking worn, their thatched roofs patched with fresh straw. A faint bell chimes in the distance, not a Viking sound, but something new, something Christian, carried on the wind. The village feels different. Fewer braids catch your eye, and crosses carved from wood hang on some doors. You wander to a small gathering by a fire pit, where a few Vikings still braid their beards, their hands slower, almost hesitant, as younger folk nearby sport short, unbraided beards or clean-shaven faces. You're settling on a frost-crusted bench, its chill biting through your cloak, and you're struck by how this fire's glow feels dimmer, like a tradition flickering in the face of change. Let's anchor this with a famous moment, the conversion of Norway under Olaf Tryggvason around 995 AD. You've heard of it, right? He baptized Vikings by the sword, spreading Christianity and reshaping Norse ways, including grooming. Beards, once braided with pride, were sometimes shaved or left plain to align with Christian ideals of humility. You're picturing them now. In this settlement, their braids thinning as crosses rise, a quiet shift in identity. Historians still argue over how fast this change swept through. Some say braiding vanished quickly. Others think it lingered in defiance. Either way, you're watching these men braid, their fingers clinging to old ways. And it's clear this ritual is a fading echo, fighting to be heard now. The weird bit, some Vikings hid tiny pagan charms in their braids to resist conversion. You're squinting at an older man slipping a small Thor's hammer, carved from bone, into his braid, tucking it out of sight with a quick glance around. It's not just a trinket's rebellion, a secret nod to Odin in a world turning to Christ. You're chuckling, imagining hiding a lucky charm in your hair during a strict dress code meeting your boss would flip. But here, it's a quiet stand. A hidden hammer keeps the old gods close, even as bells toll. You're wondering if they ever got caught, like sneaking snacks in class. Probably rare. These men braid with a conspirator's care. You lean closer, the fire's warmth brushing your face, and watch the braiding unfold. The older man's beard is a simple double twist, the hidden charm giving it a secret weight, tied with plain thread to avoid notice. A younger Viking nearby braids half-heartedly, his strands loose, like he's unsure why he bothers. You're noticing the textures, the thread's dull sheen, the hammer's smooth bone, the fire's faint flicker on their faces. It's bittersweet, like watching an old movie you love fade from streaming, and you're sinking into the rhythm, your breath slowing. You're joking to yourself about needing a secret braid charm for your next big change in the courage it'd spark. The men work in low murmurs, their voices tinged with nostalgia. One grumbles about the new ways, and another nods, tightening his braid like it's an anchor. You're stifling a laugh. It's like your grandpa ranting about smartphones, but deeper. The bond's fragile but real, a thread tying them to a past slipping away. You're thinking of your own fading traditions, maybe handwritten letters or family recipes, and how they sting when they go. These braids are a last stand, and you're tempted to cheer them on, but you keep still, letting the fires crackle. Hold you. You're joking to yourself about starting a Viking braid revival. Sign up for old school swagger. The stars gleam faintly, the bells chime cutting through the night. You're leaning back, the benches chill grounding you, and you're picturing these braids in their final days, hidden, defiant, etched in memory. You're curious about what comes next, how this art survives or fades entirely. Do the charms hold strong or crumble under time? The older man finishes his braid, the hammer hidden, and you're feeling that gentle heaviness, your eyelids drooping. You're joking to yourself about needing a Thor's hammer braid for your next life shifting. Imagine the strength, the fires. Rhythm fades, the fjords hum lulling you, and you're ready to follow this trail, to see where these fading braids lead. The night wraps you close, and you're drifting into the Viking dusk. You're easing away from the fading fire pit, the chime of that distant bell still lingering as you wander through the quiet settlement. The crunch of your boots on frosty ground softened by the settling snow. The air's cold, laced with pine, and the faint salt of the nearby fjord, and you're still caught in the weight of those hidden Thor's hammer braids, their secret defiance glowing like a spark in your mind. You're picturing yourself trying to tuck a charm into a braid. But let's be honest, you'd probably end up with a tangle worse than your last attempt at organizing a junk drawer. Now, you're headed to a modern Nordic festival where echoes of Viking beard braiding flicker in today's world. And it's got you curious about how this ancient art clings to life in a new age. You arrive at the festival, a lively sprawl of Tents and wooden stalls set against a snowy fjord. The sky a pale grey with the promise of more snow. The air hums with laughter, the strum of lutes, and the scent of grilled fish and spiced mead. Crowds in woolen cloaks and modern knitwear mingle, and you spot a few men with beards braided in Norse style. Their strands glinting with beads or threads in a nod to the past. A small stage hosts a braiding contest where participants weave, their beards under the watchful eyes of judges, their hands moving with a mix of pride and play. You're settling on a hay bale, its prickly texture grounding you, and you're struck by how this festival feels like a bridge, linking Viking roots to today's Nordic heart. Let's anchor this with a famous moment. The revival of Viking culture in the 19th century, sparked by romantic nationalism. You've heard of it, right? As Norway and Scandinavia reclaimed their Norse heritage, festivals began celebrating sagas, runes, and yes, braided beards, tying modern identity to ancient pride. You're picturing them now, in this festival, there. Braids a quiet echo of warriors and skalds, a way to say, we're still here. Historians still argue over how authentic these revivals are. Some say they're true to the Viking spirit. Others think they're more costume than culture. Either way, you're watching these braiders work, their fingers weaving past into present, and it's clear this ritual is a living thread, vibrant and evolving dot. Now, the weird bit. They use modern beads with QR codes etched into them. You're squinting at a young man threading a sleek black bead into his braid, its surface faintly carved with a digital pattern that links to his social media when scanned. It's not just bling, it's a fusion, tying Viking craft to today's tech, a nod to Odin's wisdom in a world of apps. You're chuckling, imagining a QR code in your hair linking to your playlist. Your friends would think you're a walking ad, but here, it's clever. A digital bead keeps the braid story alive, shared across screens. You're wondering if they ever scan the wrong code, like clicking a spam link. Probably rare. These folks braid with a tech-savvy focus. You lean closer, the hay bale creaking under you, and watch the braiding unfold. One man's beard is a bold triple twist, laced with traditional amber beads and a single QR-coded one, its modern sheen standing out. A woman nearby weaves her friend's beard with red threads and bone charms, laughing as she adds a digital bead for flair. You're noticing the textures, the amber's warm glow, the thread's soft sheen, the bead's cool glint in the daylight. It's nostalgic, like scrolling through old photos at 2 a.m. And you're sinking into the rhythm, your breath slowing. You're joking to yourself about needing a QR braid for your next networking event. The connections, the festival hums, voices blending in Norse chants and modern cheers. One braider grins as his QR bead scans successfully, and the crowd claps, like your buddies hyping a good karaoke pick. The bond's light but real, a shared love for roots remixed with today's vibe. You're thinking of your own nods to the past, maybe a vintage jacket or a family recipe, and how they pale next to this. These braids are a celebration, and you're tempted to join the contest, but you keep still, letting the festival's buzz hold you. You're joking to yourself about starting a Viking tech braid trendsign up for digital swagger. The snow begins to fall, dusting your cloak, and you're picturing these braids beyond the festival in photos, on feeds, in new sagas. You're curious about how they endure, how the old and new balance in this craft. Do the QR beads last, or fade like a passing app? A braider finishes, his bead gleaming, and you're feeling that gentle heaviness, your eyelids drooping. You're joking to yourself about needing a festival braid for your next big moment. Imagine the story it'd tell. The fjord's hum softens, the lute's notes lulling you, and you're ready to follow this trail to see where these modern braids lead. The festival wraps you close, and you're drifting into the Nordic day. You're easing away from the festival's lively hum, the lute's notes and laughter softening as you wander down a snowy path toward a quiet fjord, the air thick with frost and the faint whisper of waves. Your boots sink into the powdery snow, and you're still warmed by those modern Viking braids. Their QR-coded beads glinting like a bridge between ancient craft and today's world. You're picturing yourself trying to weave a digital bead into a braid, but let's be honest, probably end up with a tangle worse than your last attempt at untangling a set of fairy lights. Now, you're headed to a serene overlook to reflect on the enduring legacy of Viking beard braiding. And it's got you ready to let this journey lull you into a gentle, timeless calm. You reach the fjord's edge, a wide sweep of glassy water, reflecting a twilight sky streaked with soft pinks and purples. The snow-dusted pines stand silent, and a lone raven calls, its cry echoing across the still air. You find a smooth boulder, its surface cold but grounding, and settle down, your cloak pooling around you like a blanket. The fjord's quiet lap feels like a heartbeat, slow and steady, and you're struck by how this place holds the weight of centuries Viking warriors, skalds families, all weaving their stories into braids that still ripple through time. This isn't the roar of a feast or the buzz of a festival. It's a moment to breathe, to feel the Viking spirit wrap around you, soft as a dream. Let's anchor this with a famous moment, the enduring Viking legacy in modern Nordic identity. Seen in events like the annual Thingvellir gatherings in Iceland, echoing since 930 AD, you've heard of them, right? Vikings met to forge laws and bonds, their braided beards a badge of unity. And today's gatherings keep that spirit alive, with braids as a nod to heritage. You're picturing them now, standing by fjords like this, their braids whispering of sea voyages and saga, of sea and sagas, woven into the Nordic soul. Historians still argue over how much Viking culture shapes today's. Some say it's a deep root, others a romantic revival. Either way, you're feeling this legacy, its quiet strength flowing through you. And it's clear these braids are more than hair, they're a thread through time, tying past to present. Now, the quiet bit. Some Vikings believed braids held their spirits echo. You're picturing a warrior, long gone, braiding his beard under a sky like this, each knot a piece of his courage, meant to linger in memory or myth. It's not just grooming, it's a vow, a way to leave a mark, like carving initials into a tree. You're smiling softly, imagining your own legacy, maybe a journal, a photo, a story etched into time. Here, it's humbling. A braid could outlive its wearer, carried in tales or keepsakes. You're wondering if they ever paused, feeling the weight of eternity in their hands. Probably often their braids were their saga, and you're sinking into that thought, your heart's slowing. You lean back, the boulder's chill fading as the fjord's calm seeps into you. You're seeing those braids in your mind, the warrior's ash-streaked twists, the family's messy knots, the skald's silver-threaded strands, the festival's QR-coded beads, each one a story, a spark that glows across centuries, from Longship to today's Nordic pride. You're noticing the fjord's textures, the water's silken ripple, the snow's soft gleam, the pine's dark silhouette. It's soothing, like a lullaby you've always known, and you're letting it cradle you. your breath deep and even. You're joking to yourself one last time about needing a legacy braid for your own story. Imagine the tale it'd tell, whispered to the stars. The Vikings around you fade, their voices now a gentle hum, like wind through the pines. You're alone with the fjord, its rhythm rocking you softly. And you're thinking of your own quiet moments, nights under blankets, dreams that linger past dawn. These braids, these stories, they're not so different. They hold you, keep you safe, carry you forward. You're feeling that final heaviness, your eyelids fluttering, and you're letting go, trusting the fjord's song to guide you. The sky's colors blur, pinks and purples melting into dusk, and you're picturing one last braid woven with starlight, tying you to this Viking world forever. Your breath slows, each exhale softer, like waves retreating from the shore. The fjord's lap is fainter now, a whisper that blends with your heartbeat. And you're sinking deeper, the snow's chill gone, replaced by a warmth that feels like home. You're safe here, held by the legacy of braids. Their knots and beads, a gentle promise that you're part of something vast, something eternal. The raven calls once more, its voice a final thread, and you're drifting, the world softening, fading until it's just you and the quiet. Wrapped in a dream as old as the sea. Sleep now, let the braids hold you, let the fjords sing you home. Rest and carry their story into your dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.